Lockdown led to a dramatic increase in domestic violence, with abusers constantly monitoring devices and listening in on calls.
This signal for help.
It's a campaign by the Canadian Women's Foundation.
We developed a hand signal that can be slipped into a video call.
We used this global shift in video calling and invented a new way for women facing domestic abuse that they could call for help without leaving a digital trace. You face your palm to the camera, you tuck your thumb, and you trap your thumb. It means I need help and I need you to check in with me safely.
We launched with organic posts, designed with simple instructions on how to use the signal if you need help and what to do if you see it being used. It linked to a social media toolkit that an army of over 200 women's groups instantly downloaded, customized, and shared. Then we followed up with a PSA.
I know your mom's a great baker, so should be good.
Exploding on TikTok, it became social activism on a global scale. Amplified by influential voices, the signal has made headlines in over 45 countries.
Reported by women who used the signal to seek out help.
Syrian YouTuber Saif used the hand signal on her channel, triggering her subscribers to alert the authorities. Followed by this global news story from the US.
Brooke is in police custody this morning, accused of abducting a teenager.
Authorities say a hand signal she learned from TikTok may very well have saved her life.
In Spain, police detained a man after they saw a woman use the signal during a routine traffic stop. Another man was detained after a woman used the signal in a healthcare clinic. Mobilized by a global community, the signal for help continues to be recognized as the silent call for those who need help.
Gender-based violence tends to spike in crisis times and disaster times, but it doesn't have to. We launched our shockproofing project to do three things. We want to spark culture change through our Signal for Help campaign, which you just watched a video about. We want to do research on the policies and practices Canada needs to prevent spikes in gender-based violence altogether. And we want to create opportunities to share and act on these learnings. So I've got my colleagues here, Pamela DePinto and Karen Campbell. They're going to talk about this effort, and it spans individuals, families, workplaces, communities, and our broader culture and societal landscape. First question for you, Pam. You know, a lot of people, I think nowadays, know about the Signal for Help, but they may not know how to respond to gender-based violence. How can they learn?
Yeah, for sure. That's really common and honestly understandable that people might not know how to respond to gender-based violence, but that's why we've created some resources to help. So to learn how to respond, the best and probably the easiest thing to do is to sign up to be a Signal for Help responder. And you can do that at signalresponder.ca or our companion website in French. And when you sign up, you automatically receive the Signal for Help Responders Action Guide. And this is a really practical tool. It goes step by step into how to respond to the Signal for Help. And it provides some just more general tips and resources for how to support someone who's facing abuse. And when you sign up, you also have the chance to enroll in an email learning journey. And this is where we go deeper into the issues and we share some stories and invitations to different events and trainings. So it's really dynamic, it's really varied, and it's meant to help you learn as you go, because we know that this type of learning doesn't happen all at once, and we can all learn how to respond in better, more helpful ways. And really excitingly, we've actually had more than 27,000 people who've already signed up to be Signal for Help responders. So when you commit to do this, you're joining this really amazing growing community.
That's really fantastic. It's so exciting to see people eager and learning and joining on. Please, signalresponder.ca is the place to sign up today. So Karen, I'd love to hear more about what you're learning in terms of research on how we can shockproof our communities against gender-based violence.
Sure. I mean, since the pandemic began, we've been working with researchers and community-based organizations who do that direct service work for women, trans, and non-binary people experiencing violence. And we've learned a number of things. First off, our research really speaks to the importance of moving past the idea that these spikes in gender-based violence are inevitable. There's absolutely no reason that we should take for granted or accept that an outcome of community stress should be violence against women, trans, and non-binary people, particularly those who are from the most marginalized communities experiencing these crises the most acutely in the first place. So, shockproofing our communities against these increases really requires that culture change work you were talking about. We need to double down on healthy relationships and consent education. We need to build cultures of community care. We need to improve the material conditions of the most marginalized communities and put an end to gender-based violence in what we would call normal times, so that in times of crisis, communities are equipped to adapt and respond without violence. Another thing that we've learned about in the wake of the pandemic, we worked with researchers who took a deep dive into emergency preparedness and response plans at the provincial and territorial level. And we were unable to find any plan that included an intersectional gender-based analysis or approach, or that spoke meaningfully to gender-based violence as an outcome of emergencies or crisis situations. And I think it's interesting to note that the federal government does require that a gender responsive approach be applied to humanitarian or emergency or crisis relief efforts that Canada engages in internationally. But they haven't mandated the same approach be applied at home. They've provided some guidance to provinces and territories on how to do that, but they haven't said you must do that. So to shockproof our communities against gender-based violence in times of crisis, we need to make sure that emergency responses at all levels are accounting for and responding to the lived realities of gender-based violence survivors and their families. As we've observed in a range of community level crises, we see that organizations serving women, trans, and non-binary people are at the forefront of community responses, but they aren't always thought of in that way. And so we've seen how they've had to make huge shifts from the service provision that they normally do to things like creating food hampers, to address food insecurity, to making sure that the message is out there that even if there's a stay-at-home order, that the shelters and sexual assault centers are open. That was a big thing that was missed in the pandemic. So really it's about how they are experiencing strain on their already stretched resources and staff. And so a key point about shockproofing in our communities is that we need to have a strong, thriving, and sustainably funded women's and gender justice sector. Those organizations need to be set up for success and have the surge capacity that they need to make those service pivots in a crisis time while maintaining their capacity to provide longer-term life-saving supports that their service users need.
Thanks, Karen. That's such an important project right now. We talked about how gender-based violence spikes are going to happen more and more often as we see more crises, big disasters, climate change related stuff. So this is really timely and powerful stuff. Let's move to Pam again. The Signal for Help Responders campaign has started like more than a year ago, and people have signed on and have gotten learning all along the way. They've done some exciting things. They've come to events. They've got great emails, great opportunities to read more and get deeper in the issues. Tell us, what are the exciting things they can expect in coming months?
Yeah, we have a couple of things I'd like to mention. So in mid-November, in time with the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, we're actually going to be launching an online course to help you learn how to better recognize and respond to signs of gender-based violence. So it's going to be like a remixed version of a lot of what we have out there, but we've repackaged it in a way that it's going to be free, it's going to be accessible, and it's going to be something that you can do at your own pace. We've really tried to take the most important topics on this issue and distill them down into short modules that you can do at your own choosing in whatever order you like and when you have the time. We know that's a big one. So we've really tried to make it as easy as possible to complete this type of learning. And then in the new year, we'll actually be launching a special podcast series under the umbrella of our current podcast, All Right Now What? And this podcast series is going to feature some personal stories and some expert opinions all around this issue of gender-based violence. It's going to have a lot of heart built into it, and we have an amazing production team behind us. So I know it's going to be really powerful. And I should say that both the online course and the podcast will be bilingual. So if you'd like to stay informed about when these are going to be available, make sure you sign up to be a Signal for Help responder.
Thanks, Pam. And as a podcast lover, I'm particularly excited about that podcast coming up in the next year. So Karen, tell us a little bit more about what's next for the shockproofing efforts.
Sure. There's lots of exciting things happening in the coming months. Our team is working with our partners at Women's Shelters Canada to organize a summit in Ottawa at the end of March. We're bringing together over 500 gender-based violence organizations from across the country, and it's going to be the first major in-person gathering for the sector since before the pandemic. So we're really excited to be able to see our colleagues in person, to reconnect, and to have some really critical conversations about what we've learned over this period, and to develop and further our strategies to shockproof our communities. This sector-wide piece, along with the ongoing research and advocacy work that we're doing, all of the work that Pam and team are doing on the Signal for Help Responders campaign, the podcast, these are all really important pieces of our work to address gender-based violence in Canada.
I stayed out of it.
I wondered if it was any of my business.
I kept quiet.
I haven't always known how to help.
But not anymore.
Because if you're experiencing abuse,
If I see you use the violence at home signal for help,
I will not judge you.
I will know what to do.
I will help you.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Nathalie Jean-Charles, gestionnaire d'échange de connaissances. La nation canadienne Keaka, Mohawk, est reconnue comme la gardienne des terres et des eaux sur lesquelles je me trouve présentement. Elle est également connue sous le nom de Montréal. Partenaire bénéficiaire, la Maison Marguerite de Montréal au Québec offre un programme d'art-thérapie appelé l'art de reconstruire sa vie. Il donne aux femmes du refuge des outils créatifs et des stratégies d'action collective pour les aider à faire face à la violence qui les a menées à trouver la sécurité au refuge et à les permettre de reprendre leur place dans la société. Un participant du programme a déclaré ceci: « J'ai vraiment bénéficié de l'environnement serein où on m'a montré comment gérer mon anxiété avec différentes activités. Certaines des activités qui m'ont aidé ont été le jardinage, un tableau de visualisation que je construis, le travail avec de l'argile et la peinture. J'ai appris qu'il n'y a pas de bonne façon de faire les choses. C'est ce que je crois vraiment. Ce programme m'a beaucoup soutenu. » Ceci est un exemple de la façon dont vous aidez les femmes, les filles et les personnes bispirituelles, trans et non-binaires à sortir de la violence et à reconstruire leur vie.